Hello and welcome to Good Morning UK Have Your Say, a Force for Good's mid-morning show coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. This is our 39th show today, soon to be 40 next week. And that just shows the power of stick-to-itiveness. Just keeping doing it week in, week out. We're broadcasting across all our platforms and we're saying hello to all the people on TikTok where we are doing missionary work. We're doing missionary work on TikTok because we are the foremost pro-UK unionist organisation on TikTok. Good morning to Adam, who's come in there. Good to see you, Adam, who is calling from the great British county of Leicestershire. Hope things are well. Good to see Richard and to Barry also. Good morning to Barry. And thanks, James, on TikTok for following. We're almost at 2,000 followers on TikTok. Let's get to 2,000 today. Sandra, good morning all. And nice to see Catherine in as well. Folks, if you have any questions, please do fire them in today. Hello to Pauline as well. Hope you're keeping well there, Pauline. And Des says, top of the morning to you. Top of the morning to you too, Des. And good to see Equalizer, who gave us a follow. And also to Phyllis. How are you? Keep doing a good job, says Phyllis. Absolutely, we will. And Rylan, hope you're well, Rylan. Great to hear from you. Hope to meet you again one of these days. So, this week in British politics has been an interesting one, as always. Last night, the Coronavirus Act 2020 was extended for another 6 months. Now, you might recall back last year, they brought this act in very quickly. It was a massive act. They brought it in. They called it emergency legislation. There was virtually no debate about it in Parliament whatsoever, and it got passed almost overwhelmingly, if I can recall, because everybody was too scared to vote against it. Well, there's been plenty of time now for the politicians to actually read it and establish a position about whether or not they agree with some of the very severe restrictions and powers which have been given to the government as a consequence of this act. And of course, it was also this act, the Coronavirus Act, which devolved the chaos to the incompetent devolved assemblies. And so it really just, it made the coronavirus response throughout the United Kingdom a four-way split, essentially, so that all the parts of the United Kingdom were all doing their different thing, which is where we're still stuck at the moment, because last night it passed without even a vote. And, you know, you could see the videos that are up on social media, and the House was basically empty. It's like the politicians didn't really care, and it got voted through without even, it didn't get voted through, it got passed without a vote because, quote unquote, the mood of the House was not to have a vote. Well, I have to say, as a British Unionist, as somebody who really does respect our British institutions, it was not a good look. It was not a good look. And that's worrying and disturbing, especially on something of such magnitude as these emergency powers, which really do lock in the power of what we're calling the biosecurity state going forward. And so, bad lookout. And last night, I have to say, the House of Commons did not exactly grace itself that way. So that was a shame, and that was a pity. And any thoughts on that, please fire them in. Hi, Tommy. Good to see you. Good to see you. And to Kenny as well. And as Pauline says, as a consequence of that, far too many powers were given and played into Sturgeon's hands. Because, of course, as we know, the Scottish nationalists will take what you give receive it without thanks, and then pretend that they never received it in the first place, and they'll simply use their powers to do whatever they actually want, just to mess up the United Kingdom. And a bunch of jumped up councillors, says a chap there on TikTok. And good to see all the folk coming in. Thanks for the follow. Please give us a follow if you could on TikTok. We're almost at 2,000. We're almost at 2,000, and we are the biggest unionist force out there on TikTok. Ed Smallwood asks, what's your opinion on Sturgeon's push for the preservation of the Scottish Highlands? Well, I'm not aware that she was pushing for that. I don't quite know what you mean. I know there's a theme that the Greens come up with called rewilding. That's not exactly the preservation of it. That's more the messing up of it, the letting it grow wild again so nobody can get close to it again. That's more about what that's about. But so I'm not quite sure what you mean by preservation as far as that's concerned. Although I'd be interested to know more. Interested to know more about that. Adam says, it's the same with Holyrood as far as these bills going through very quickly are concerned. They go through without a proper vote. That's true. Good morning. Good morning to that Preston journalist. Looking forward to being on your show shortly. That should be a good one. Folks, Google that Preston journalist. Give him a follow on YouTube, please. Pauline says, in response to that, Sturgeon does not want to preserve the Highlands because her nationalism is about centralisation. Kenny asks, what about the claims that the MI agreement has a precedent for an indy ref? What's the MI agreement, Kenny? Yeah. So yeah. So we have this coronavirus thing has gone through again, and that's been extended until March. Okay, and the way that it seems to be going at the moment is it's going to be extended indefinitely. And that's what's frustrating to so many people. You know, I was speaking to somebody yesterday and I said, it's not as if we've got a political system here in the United Kingdom where you've got two parties, both of whom believe opposite things. That's actually a healthy democracy. What we have at the moment is two parties, and I'm talking about Labour and Tory at the British Parliament, who both believe the same things, only to a different degree. And so the Tories will believe in extending the Coronavirus Act, but Labour want to extend it even more. Or you'll have Tories believing in the climate green agenda, but Labour saying it's not going far enough. So it's not like one side is saying that's all wrong. They're both travelling down the same road. They're both going in the same direction. One just wants to go faster than the other. And so a lot of people are frustrated, people who don't believe in the biosecurity state, people who don't, or at least are sceptical of the climate agenda and are sceptical of the drive for so-called green energy and so on. They've got no actual establishment voice that can speak for them and that can suggest that there would be some sort of change on the horizon. It's all just going in the same direction, and I think that's what so many people find frustrating at the moment. Very frustrating. You know, we've got the climate COPs 26 coming to Glasgow, and it opens on Halloween, the 31st of October, which is strangely suitable in a way. and it lasts until the 12th of November. And that's going to be a complete pantomime. We're calling it the Climate Circus, the Climate Clown, the Climate Clown World. And the Climate Clown World is coming to town. The Circus is coming to town on Halloween, the 31st of October. And you're not going to hear any politicians speaking against it or being skeptical even. Being skeptical of this drive towards it. It's really unusual. What we've got in the climate ideology is a substitute religion. Okay, it has all the trappings of what we call apocalypticism, which is the idea that the world is going to end due to the behavior of mankind. We're doing things wrong, and there's going to be a catastrophe coming down. It's with the falling away of traditional religion in the Western world, there's still that desire among many people, and it's expressed in secular ways. That's our theory, at least. And the climate crisis is a religion for secular people who want to believe that they can control their destiny in some way, but it goes against all the normal traditions, of course, of the Abrahamic religions. The Abrahamic religions believe that ultimately it is God in charge, whereas the secular powers, the secular people want to believe that the human being is ultimately in control. So it, instead of worshipping God, it worships essentially man, and says that man can create the universe in his own image. So it's got the trappings of religion, but it's going against that whole religion. It's worshipping Mother Earth, as it were. It's worshipping Mother Earth rather than worshipping, in the Abrahamic traditions of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, worshipping a god. It worships the earth. So that's where you are with the climate religion. And it has its goddesses, the Greta Thunberg woman, who's actually soon to be 19, no longer a girl, certainly, goodness me, but still raising her up as the goddess, as it were, of this new world religion. Very strange stuff, really, when you look at it from those perspectives, but you have to, because that helps to put it into some kind of wider context. And also the worship of the child as well, which is a kind of inversion of the Abrahamic tradition as well, which does not put the child over the adult. Goodness me, I'm getting very metaphysical this morning. I don't know what was in my coffee. But you can see all these things playing out, and when you see these things playing out, it helps to put things into more of a perspective, so you understand what's happening there. Alan says, how am I this morning? I think I am very good, thank you. As does Ross, says, good morning, fellow Brits. So please do give us a share, folks. Give us a share on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter, because that really helps to get our message out. And goodness knows we need it, because the unionist voice is not heard properly. It's not heard properly on the mainstream media, and it's not heard properly on TikTok. That's why we're on TikTok, and that's why we have established a really good platform there with excellent videos. We put out 9 videos last week, and they've got about 40,000 views on average. I mean, great engagement on TikTok. So thanks to everybody who's following us on there. It really does help if you can share or like or do what you possibly can, but certainly do give us a follow. Thank you very much for that. So I'm just sharing as well while I'm talking to you. I'm sharing around various platforms. We've got, coming up shortly, we've got our competition of this day in British history, which is for 3 Union Jack pens. 3 Union Jack pens. These wee pens. 3 of them are coming up as a prize in our competition, which is going to be great. Raymond says, Romans 1 chapter 1 is very clear. They worship the creature rather than the creator. Praise God that all scripture is given by inspiration of God. And Richard says, let's wreck our energy supply and economy to get to net zero. Seems to be their attitude. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party is laughing. Yeah, as if the Chinese Communist Party are going to do any of the sort of stuff that we do. They're just laughing at the stupidity of the West, which knows no bounds. Absolutely. It's almost like we... Raymond says the Queen's coming to Northern Ireland tomorrow. Well, that's good to know. Good to know. Good to know. Absolutely. Now, just a message coming in there. Let me see it. Absolutely. We have got... you know, we're breaking boundaries. As a unionist group, we're doing everything that we can. And one of the things we're going to do is establish a mobile phone app, okay? A mobile phone app, which is a way of us reaching out to those people who really only engage with websites via the mobile phone. And for them, often of a younger demographic, they like downloading apps. Click on the app, bang, takes you to our website, and at the same time we'll revamp our website. So we're raising money for an app. So if you can help us raise the money, please do click on the link, which is on Facebook there and on Twitter and on YouTube. Yeah, well, Alex makes a very important point. He goes, today's most pressing problem is not climate, it's Russia, China and North Korea. Well, in an international sense, that's absolutely so, isn't it? But even in a national sense, climate change is not the most important thing facing Britain. The most important thing facing it is the development of what we're calling the biosecurity state. Another important thing is the integrity of the United Kingdom itself. Another important thing is the falling away of proper representative parliamentary democracy in the last 18 months. And, of course, fourthly, the absolute invasion of the south of England by so-called asylum seekers. I mean, these are all big issues. These are tangible issues. These are things we could do something about. These are things that politicians could get their teeth into and start proposing practical solutions to. But you know what? It seems that politicians don't want to propose practical solutions to tricky questions such as the invasion of the south of England by countless hundreds of people every week. They don't want to look at the creation of the biosecurity state. They'd far rather think about all these nebulous, abstract concepts such as climate change and how the world might warm up by a degree or two over the next 1,000 years. You know, they want to just lose themselves in that nebulous, abstract thinking. And when I say abstract, what does abstract mean? Abstract means existing in thought or as an idea, but having no physical or concrete existence. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Abstract means existing in thought or as an idea, but having no physical or concrete existence. And that's the climate change clown world. That's the climate change nonsense, basically. You know, we've got, here in Scotland, we've got Nicola Sturgeon, who can't run the NHS properly. They're drafting in the army to help run ambulances. Okay, but she thinks she can dial down the temperature of the planet by 2 degrees. We've got, and we're not taking any party political sides here, but we've got Boris Johnson, who can't stop physical dinghies full of physical people rowing across the channel, but he thinks he can dial down the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere by 2 degrees. You know, that's just madness. But politicians like to do that because it allows them to grandstand, it allows them to go to big conferences, it allows them to get their face on the front of the paper. It's an easy world, and they can just virtue signal about stuff. But if you say, well, listen, mate, could you actually get the ambulances to work? Could you get the NHS to work? Could you stop the literal invasion of our country? No, they can't do that. And they're not interested in doing that. Oh no, that's too physical, that's too real. That might involve making a controversial statement. That might involve getting a bad editorial written about me in The Guardian. You know, they don't want to do that, but let's just talk nebulously about abstract concepts. And it's also hypocritical as well. As somebody said to me this morning, you know, we here in Scotland have these medical passports have been brought in. Okay, if you want to go to a football game now or a pop concert, you need one of these medical passports. You know what I'm talking about. I can't say the C word, but you know what I'm talking about. And yet, all of the people who are coming to these big events in Glasgow at the beginning of November, everybody who's coming to the COP26 thing, they don't need passports to get into these buildings. Okay, so it's just us, the little people, who have to go along with this. It's almost like they're laughing in our faces, really. Well, somebody's saying there that the Tories are incompetent at their job. I don't want to make any party political agreement with that or not, but all the politicians have let us down. Albino says, of course they don't need passports, they have diplomatic immunity. That's a good one. They have diplomatic immunity. I like it. Well, Julie says it's not just Scotland. She had to show hers at the weekend in Birmingham at a concert. Really? I didn't know that. They've not been brought in officially in England that I'm aware of, but that's interesting that you had to show one. Oh yeah, Kenny is saying that what he meant was the NI agreement, by which he meant the Good Friday Agreement, and whether the Good Friday Agreement sets a precedent for an indy ref, because the Good Friday Agreement, for some reason, it was written into it that there could potentially be a referendum within 7 years of the last referendum that had been held in Northern Ireland. And so the Scottish nationalists have seized on that and said that's a precedent in British constitutional law that says you can have a referendum potentially every 7 years. So they've got, it's not a very strong point because that's referring only to Northern Ireland, but it is a bit irritating that somebody thought to actually write that into a British law, because of course while it should not be relevant to Scotland, it is still something that can be used to make mischief, which is what the Scottish nationalists try to do. So it's a pity that that was written into law, but it's not relevant in a Scottish sense. Kenny would be my answer. Well, yes, you know, here's Alex saying that he's moving into a new build property with gas central heating. and he struggled to sell his existing property due to its electric heating system. And it seems the Greens and Patrick Harvey, the flower pot man, will be insisting on him pulling out his new gas central heating in a few years' time. And who's going to foot that bill? That's absolutely so true. I mean, most places around Glasgow, for example, it's gas central heating. I mean, are we really going to get every single person's gas central heating ripped out, replaced with some of these heat pumps, which are large, which are loud, which are expensive, and which don't work as effectively? You know, it's madness, and hopefully that'll pass, though, because surely that can't come to be. But it really is appalling the way that the fossil fuel industry has been attacked by these nebulous, virtue signalling, green people. And we're not against green things, of course, but we're against it when it's stupid. Ziggs the Wolf says, good morning, fellow Brits. Good to see you, Ziggs. Give us a follow, please. Thanks to Mark for following, and to Albino and to Sean. Good to see you. Send in your questions here. If you're a Scottish nationalist, you've got questions about the Union, please do fire them in, because we are the people who can answer your questions. Yes, Back from the Dead says, why are people so scared of saying the word? Well, it's because the system, the media, will remove you if you tell the truth about these things. They will remove you, you know. So, and they have algorithms which find people who say the C word, and then they look at them and they go, oh, we can't allow that to be spoken, you know. So it's a real, you got to be careful whether you say the C word or the V word, even the P word. You've got to be careful about it if you don't want to get removed from social media for telling the truth. Cam has got a question for the Union, is why? Cam is a Scottish nationalist. Thank you for asking, Cam. I'm going to direct you to a really good article which was in the Times on October the 18th, written by Alex Massey, and he makes several points about that. He said, if the United Kingdom did not exist, we would want to invent it, okay? And he gives some good points as to why we would want to invent it. But before he does that, he also points out that, you know, Nicola Sturgeon will always say that if Scotland's a world leader in this, that, and the next thing, and it's certainly true. Scotland is a world leader in quite a few things, including digital gaming and all that kind of thing, you know. But as he points out, if we're so good right now, it's because of the Union, okay? It's because the Union is serving us very well. We put up this article on our Facebook page, by the way, Cam, so you can see it there. He also points out that, you know, there is no oppression within the Union at the moment. It's not like Scotland's sense of national identity is in some way being restricted in any way, okay? There's no way that if Scotland leaves the Union, there's going to be some resurgence in Scottish identity. You know, it's got a very powerful identity as it is at the moment. Nobody is suppressing the Scottish identity. It works extremely well within the Union. You can be as Scottish as you want. And the important thing as well is, of course, you can allow others to be as Scottish and British as they want also. It allows all identities to rub along together. Whereas what happens if there was a breakaway, and unfortunately we've seen this in the Republic of Ireland, is that the British identity gets pushed out, it gets suppressed, and it doesn't get talked about, and you've got to keep your head down and shut up, basically. And we don't want that in Scotland, so the Union is the best way of allowing multiple identities to rub along together. We're not always necessarily going to agree with each other, but at least we can rub along together. We can swim about, as I always say, in the big British pond, and we can swim past those that we don't necessarily want to engage with. But take us out and put us into a goldfish bowl, then we do what fish do in a goldfish bowl, which is we start eating each other. So we don't want that, okay? So the union is a great way of allowing everybody to swim around in the big British pond. And of course, economically, as Alex Massey points out here in his article, the same sort of economic arguments which existed back in 1707 also exist today, and billions of pounds come from the British Central Bank to all parts of the United Kingdom, and we've seen that in the crisis of the last 18 months as well. So it's a union that, as Massey says here, infringes no sense of identity while offering greater prosperity, and that's a bargain worth accepting. So I hope that was a wee answer, Cami Koss, to your point of view. And you see there, Cam's come back, he says, goodbye British identity. You see, that's what we're dealing with. That's a pity. That's a pity, because that's a man who will not allow the rest of us to be British if he got his way. And I'm afraid, Cam, that's not a democratic point of view, and it's not a sustainable point of view, and it's not one that we can accept, you know. And so it's best that we have the union so that folks like you don't try to push out folks like me. And Pauline also says that, as Massey said, there are more differences between Scots than between the Scots and the English. And isn't that so true? Isn't that so true? And I think Cam there is one of those folk who is seems to regard himself as so different from his fellow Scots that he actually wants to say goodbye to them. And I mentioned the Union of 1707 there, but there was also an earlier union in 1603, and I'm going to talk about that for a moment on this day in British history. Now, I'm going to just talk to you about this day in British history, and then I'll ask you a question, and the winner will get three of those fantastic wee pens, and they've even got a little British phone box. They say London down the side of them, but they've also got a Union Jack and a little British phone box, most of which were made in Scotland, by the way. Just a little bit of info for you. So yeah, so on this day in British history was the day that the Scots King James VI declared that he was King of Great Britain. On this day, 20th of October, 1604, he proclaimed himself King of Great Britain by royal decree, and he believed that his kingdoms were united together in his person. Now, how had that come about? Well, he was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Elizabeth I, of course, and Mary, Queen of Scots, vied for the title of the throne of England. Mary, Queen of Scots, believed that she was the rightful heir to the throne of England. Elizabeth I didn't like that. She had her imprisoned in the Tower and unfortunately committed regicide, which was a great shame and tragedy. But when Elizabeth I passed away, there was no Mary, Queen of Scots, so it fell naturally to her son, James VI, to actually become eventually the King of England on the 24th of March 1603, and that's known as the Union of the Crowns, and it's one of the formative events in the history of the Union. And of course, as many of you know, when we talk about the Union, we talk about it in not just a political way, but also in a social and cultural way, going back thousands of years since the dawn of time. So that's known as the Union of the Crowns. That was on the 24th of March 1603. But 18 months later, James was getting annoyed at people thinking of himself as James VI of Scotland and James I of England. And because that's such a clunky way of thinking about it, he said, no, I'm the King of Great Britain. I united in my being the realms of Scotland and the realm of England together into a new realm called Great Britain. And so he said, he issued his royal decree, and he said, wherefore we have thought good to discontinue the divided names of England and Scotland out of our regal style, and do intend and resolve to take and assume unto us in manner and form hereafter expressed the name and style of King of Great Britain. And so that's fantastic. And so that's why we don't play about by calling him, oh, he was James VI of Scots and James I of England. No, he was James VI of Great Britain. He was the 6th James in the territory which had become the realm of Great Britain, even though there had never been a James in England before. Just as today, for example, Elizabeth II is the 2nd Elizabeth in the territory which has become the United Kingdom, even though there was never an Elizabeth in Scotland before. So there you go. James VI on this day proclaimed himself King of Great Britain, 20th of October 1604. In a few minutes I'll ask you a wee question about that, and the winner will get this. Three of those, and send to contact@aforceforgood.uk. Yes, going right back, of course, we were at war, but we're not at war anymore. That's the thing, Cam. That's the thing. We're not at war anymore, thankfully. And these wars can be seen also as an attempt, as things we had to fight through anyway to get to where we are today. So the Union can be seen in that historical context, going right back. There is a theme that runs through it all. That's the narrative that we have, There's lots of comments coming in on TikTok. Please do keep firing them in. The Union is thousands of years old, Cam. That's the point. I'm sorry if this point is being lost on you, but I do want to make it. Okay? The Parliamentary Union. You're talking about Parliamentary Union. That goes back to 1707. We've just spoken there about the Regal Union. That goes back to 1603. The English-Welsh Union goes back to the 16th century. That goes back to 1549. And prior to that, you had unions of kingdoms in Scotland and unions of kingdoms in England. And prior to that, you simply had social and cultural familial bonds as well. So we're not so much, as we always say, we're not so much a family of nations. We're a nation of families. We're not so much a union of nations. We're a nation of unions. Okay, Cam, I'm afraid if you're going to swear, you're going to have to be banned. That's a pity. Because you were sort of making sense for a few minutes, but now you're going beyond the pale. So that's what we have to do. we will always engage with Scottish nationalists on our page, but if you swear or insult us, you will be banned for life. So you only get one chance, Cam, okay? And you blew it there with that remark. Okay, now let's go on. Collie Boy Behoy, Collie Behoy 1 says, it's like your next door neighbour telling you how you have to live. No, it's your family talking to you about how we can best work together. And that's what it's about. Thanks for your comment, Ryan. Yeah, good. Well, let me give you the question about what we spoke about earlier there. Now, if you have the answer to this, fire it into contact@aforceforgood.uk and we will announce the winner at the end. And the winner will get this little packet of 3 of these pens, okay? 3 of these pens for the winner of our question. Now that little thing there, you can unscrew that if you don't want that, you can unscrew it. But otherwise, great wee pens. And the question is, on this day, 20th of October 1604, James VI became king of which realm? No, he didn't become king of it. He named himself king of it because he was already king of it since 1603. Okay, so on this day, 20th of October, James VI announced himself king of which realm? Which realm did he declare himself king of on this day back in 20th of October 1604? That's the question. Send it into contact@aforceforgood and the winner will get 3 of these Union Jack pens. Somebody there, and this is a good one, goes, what about the oppression the United Kingdom has caused to the world over hundreds of years? Listen, anybody who asks me that is not arguing in good faith, okay? You're not arguing in good faith. We look for the good in the United Kingdom. If the first thing you do is look to the bad, then you're not arguing with us in good faith, right? What happens, because we don't even agree with you that what you might call bad is bad, okay? So we're not really on the same table, around the same page here on anything to do with that. But the first thing you have to do is to acknowledge that there's a lot of good. And of course there may be bad, but we can argue about that one way or the other. Okay? So what about the bad? We learn from it to do better next time. That's what we do. But we don't condemn a nation because you don't like parts of its history. Every nation has got parts of its history it needs to learn from and do better from. So we just concentrate on the good and we learn from the bad in order to do better next time. But we don't accept as a premise that the United Kingdom is bad. And people who accept that as a premise of an argument are not people that are around the same table as us. Anyway, good questions coming in there on TikTok. No, Sir Butcher's Dog says you shouldn't look for the good. Yes, you should. Of course you should. Of course you should. That's the first thing that any person who wants the best is going to try to do. That's the first thing you look for, is the good in somebody or in a nation or whatever. You look for the good to see what the redeeming factors may be there. That's good faith. That's arguing in good faith. Going straight in and looking for the bad is arguing in bad faith from the get-go. Bill says, why is the nationalist argument always hundreds of years old? That's a good point. That's a good point. You know, it's as if there's a certain area of time that they only exist in, and that they're frozen in aspic back in those days. Do they think they will be warriors walking about in kilts and roaming the Highlands? Well, not if Nicola Sturgeon gets away, because she's going to basically allow the whole thing to descend into rewilding. You know, she's just going to let it all just blow up with weeds and wolves and poisonous snakes and stuff like that nobody will ever even want to go back there again. However, as Bill continues, this is modern Britain, the greatest union on earth and the best thing to ever happen to Scotland, and has made us a modern economic, trade and defence superpower. That's so true. Adam says the Queen has cancelled her visit to Northern Ireland there over medical advice. Okay. Well, yeah, so many are stuck in the past, Mary, you're right. And we do have a big problem, Alex, here in Scotland with government-funded bodies being tied to Scottish nationalism and being tied to the purse strings, that is, of the Scottish Nationalist administration. Runrig Rocket says, keep up the good work. Thank you. Thank you. And we, of course, the Scots, were the biggest cogs in the empire. We're certainly disproportionately represented, that was for sure, and achieved great things. And exactly, we developed the world, as Alex says. We didn't oppress anybody, we developed the world. And this is a good point to alert you to a really good interview with David Starkey on GB News last week. And we'll put that up in the links there when he's talking about, because Greta Thunberg had come out and condemned Britain for industrialisation, for the Industrial Revolution. Goodness me, the Industrial Revolution was one of the major elements which catapulted the world into modernity. And, you know, going back to the good and bad thing, huge elements of good came out of that. Were there bad things? Of course there were bad things, but we don't concentrate on the bad things like Greta Thunberg does. We learn from them in order to do better. And we stand by all of our ancestors who worked those factories, who worked those mines, who led harsh, hard lives. Oh my! But in doing so, brought us to the world of relative comfort that we live in the Western world today. You know, we pay tribute to our ancestors throughout the Industrial Revolution who created modernity. And David Starkey really puts that well in a short 10-minute interview which he had on GB News. And so good to see David Starkey being welcomed back by GB News as well after the mainstream media had a go at him. So good to see David Starkey back on form, giving it pelters to Greta Thunberg for attacking Britain and our wonderful Industrial Revolution, much of which was the product, of course, of Scots' ingenuity. Yeah. Yep, he's on GB News, Alex. That's where you'll find him. They seem to be having him now fairly regularly. I saw another interview with him a couple of days ago. Yes, says Richard, the Industrial Revolution was a major leap forward for the world led by Britain. Good comments there coming up on TikTok. Charlie says, Charlie asks, what political party do I support? Charlie B, I don't support any political party. We as a unionist organisation understand that there are people for the United Kingdom from all parties and none. We don't take any position. And if you had earlier, we were very sceptical and very critical of the present Tory party, especially what it's doing with the promotion of the biosecurity state throughout the United Kingdom. And so don't imagine that unionists can be stereotypically thought of as representing one party or another, and we at A Force for Good are non-party political. Yeah, and as Bill says, people will keep quiet about other countries oppressing people, such as maybe the Chinese and their problems with their people, but they all they ever do is slag off the United Kingdom, which is a pity. And unionists are rising, absolutely, Frankie. We're getting our voice back after so many years of thinking that people were speaking for us, and then realising that they're maybe not speaking for us as well as we thought they would be. Right. Right. That Preston journalist makes an interesting point there. Earlier on, somebody said that on TikTok that they had to show a passport to get into a venue in Birmingham, and that I didn't understand why that should be, since that's not the law in England. But that Preston journalist, whom you'll find on YouTube, says vaccine passports haven't been brought in England, but they can be requested if the company chooses to. It's usually the woke liberals, such as actors and pop stars, that request them. Isn't that so true? I was just thinking as well, here in Scotland we've got these passports have come in, and let's hope that we'll get rid of them one day. But as we know, politicians, once they have something, they don't want to get rid of it. They'll keep it because it's a power that they have. And so we may be facing these passports for a very, very long time. Hopefully not. But you would like to think that rock stars and pop musicians and so on would say, look, I'm not playing that venue if you're going to demand that my fans have to show passports to get in. You would think that would be the least a pop star could do to show respect to all their fans. You would think that, but where are they? There's not a single pop star or major one saying that. And I'm seeing adverts in the paper for concerts next year, big name musicians coming to Glasgow to the Hydro and so on. These will all require their fans to show passports, and it will mean that people like myself will not be able to get in because we're not submitting to the biosecurity state. So it's like, do these stars don't care? They don't care about their fans. I don't ever want to see any pop star or rock band that goes along with this. I'm not interested in them anymore if they're going to demand that I can't get to see them unless I've had some medical intervention. That's unacceptable behaviour. Unacceptable behaviour. Collie Boy says England is on its knees due to food shortages. I think that might be somewhat of an exaggeration. Somewhat of an exaggeration there, Collie Boy. David says genuine question. Well, see, when somebody begins with a genuine question, you're always a little bit cautious that it might not be a genuine question. But David OC goes on and says, genuine question, has Brexit strengthened or weakened the United Kingdom as a whole? I'm going to say that ultimately it will strengthen it. But what it does need is it needs men and women of integrity and vision in order to make it work. In our wee book for the Union, we quoted our speech at our great British Brexit celebration in George Square on Glasgow at 11 p.m. at night on Friday the 31st of January 2020, when we celebrated the positive future which is opening up for the United Kingdom, which is once more engaged with the world. But we did say at the end, we made a toast, and we said for wise men and women to lead and for British independence to succeed. And ultimately that's what it requires. We're all, whether we're for Brexit or against Brexit, we're all at the mercy to an extent of our politicians, and we have to hope that they can be wise. And some of them are not. That's the problem. And some of them are, and we can only hope that the wise men and women will get into leadership positions in order to ensure that it will succeed, because it's a huge opportunity. Brexit is a huge opportunity for Britain, a huge opportunity, but it requires our politicians to lead with wisdom. Now, who won our prize? Who won our prize? We have a winner. We have a winner. There's several people who have come in there with the answer, and let me just tell you who the winner is. Just put it up on the screen. Our winner is Mary Clark. Congratulations, Mary. 3 of these pens will be winging their way to you. Now, Mary, could you use that same email address and just send us your mailing address, please? Thanks very much. Well done, Mary. And please do check out our wee book, folks, because that's a bestseller, and it really does help keep us going. And if you've already got a wee book, or if you'd like to help us in other ways, please do consider helping us to fund our app, our mobile phone app. We're going to need some substantial money for that in the next month, basically the next 2 weeks. Ideally, we want to get this started, and so if you can donate anything, large or small, please do. We'll put the one-off donation links up there on our platforms. If you can help, please do that. Excellent stuff. Thank you for everybody that's come in on Twitter. Good stuff. Good stuff. We're all proud to be Scottish, and many of us are also proud to be British. Rain. We would say that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, it's the bottom of the hour. Thank you very much for listening. It went very quickly there. We'll be back next week at the same time, 10:30 on TikTok, with our Scottish Unionist and Indy chat. Thank you to everybody on TikTok who has come in, and thank you to everybody also on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube, and thank you for your engagement and for your comments. Hope you've enjoyed the show, folks. We will see you next week. It just remains for us to say God bless the United Kingdom and God save the Queen. See you next week.